Hey everyone! So as you can tell by the title of this video, today I'm going to be talking about my ectopic pregnancy story. But before I get started, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about myself. So my name is Leticia. I am 22 years old and I have been married for almost 5 years now. It'll be 5 years in April, which is super exciting. So I kind of wanted to make this video because this topic is something that a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about, and I just wanted to share my story and what I went through so that hopefully if you're going through a similar situation, or if you know someone that's going through a similar situation, you can kind of get different insight maybe, or get to know about this topic a little bit better. So as I mentioned before, my husband and I have been married for almost 5 years, and we got married pretty young. I was 17 at the time, but that's a whole other story. So my husband and I started having more serious conversations about having a baby and starting a family sort of midway through 2018. I stopped taking birth control, and then by the time it was October of 2018, we started really trying. I was tracking my cycle, I was taking prenatals, you know, all that good stuff. But as months went by, it just wasn't happening. It got pretty frustrating actually, especially for me. I kind of felt like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what's wrong with me? Can I not get pregnant? All these thoughts. Now, fast forward an entire year from when we start trying, in October of 2019, we finally got a positive. It happened, I got pregnant, and I was so excited. We were so excited. 2 days after receiving the best, most exciting news of my life, I received the worst, most devastating news of my life. And this is that story. So the day I found out was October 9th, 2019. It was a Wednesday. I don't think I'll ever forget this date. It was a normal day. I was at work. I was working as a receptionist. I was doing the closing shift that day, so I was supposed to be there until 8. Sort of halfway through my shift, I started feeling like a very weird, very sharp, like stabbing pain. I don't even know how to describe it completely. Like, it was almost like a period cramp in the same like area, but so much sharper and like specifically focused on the left side. It was like a pain I've never felt before in my life. It's so hard for me to even describe it now. Pain is one of those things that you feel at that moment, but then when you don't, you kind of forget how that felt, if that makes sense. So I felt a very sharp pain. I had no idea what that was. I had never felt that before. So I tried not to focus a lot on the pain and try to get back to work, but it was just getting worse and worse and worse, like so much worse. It got to the point where I literally could not stand up straight. It would hurt so bad, or even like crouching over, it was so painful. So I called my manager and tell her what's going on, that I don't know what this pain is that I'm feeling, but I have to go to the ER. I have to see what's going on. This is like weird. It was maybe like half an hour of feeling this pain, and it wasn't going away. I took Tylenol to try to see if it would go away, and it wasn't. It was getting worse. My husband was working late that day too, so he was at work at the time it was happening. So there was no way he'd be able to pick me up. So I called my mom and asked her to please come get me. Like, she comes, picks me up, and takes me to the hospital. So we get there, get checked in, and wait in the waiting room for a few hours. And finally they bring me in. They take my blood and a urine sample. So they put me in like a little room in the ER to wait for a doctor to come in and talk to me about what I'm feeling. So then it's another few hours of waiting, or at least what felt like a few hours. I think it was maybe like 40 minutes, but I was in pain, and it just, yeah. So the doctor finally comes in and asked my mom if she can leave the room, and I was like, that's strange, but okay. And he asked if the nurse had come in and told me the result of the pregnancy test, and I said no one came in. And then he was like, oh, okay, so the results are positive. And then I was like, what? Like, did I hear that correctly? You're saying that I'm pregnant? And then he said, yep, you're pregnant. And then he said the HCG levels were pretty low, so he was assuming that it was very early in the pregnancy. So then he asked my mom to come back in the room, and I tell her, and she gets so excited. Obviously, I'm still concerned because of the pain that I was feeling, so I asked him what could that be, and if it's a bad thing. And he says that it's one of 3 options. The first being it could be early signs of a miscarriage, or an ectopic pregnancy, or normal pregnancy thing. He said he wasn't sure, but that they were gonna try to do some more tests. So he was gonna come back and do an ultrasound for me. I have a little clip from that day, and it's very short, but he pretty much says it's too early to see anything in a regular ultrasound that they do on your belly.
As I kind of warned, it's probably a little bit too early.
So the doctor also explained that there's another type of ultrasound that they could do, but they didn't have the machine in this particular hospital. So he told me to call my OB the next day, set up an appointment to follow up with another blood test to check the hormone levels, the HCG levels, and to also do it's like an internal one. It's like a thing they insert, anyways, to get a better look at what's going on. So he explains to me that if this is a normal pregnancy, that after 48 hours, my hormone levels were supposed to double. They're supposed to keep doubling every 48 hours. So then I made an appointment with my doctor the next morning for the Friday, 2 days after Wednesday, to check again the HCG levels and to set up an appointment to have an internal ultrasound. So the next day comes around, it's Thursday, I call my doctor, set up the appointment. I'm not feeling any pain, which is great, so I'm very hopeful and optimistic about what is going to happen. So then come that Friday, I go to my appointment, I see my doctor, she explains again the same thing that the doctor at the emergency room explained to me about the possibility of a miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy. So then I get my blood drawn again and get it sent to the lab, and she said that she would call me back with the results either that night before they close or the Monday after, because they're not open on the weekends. So then I go home and I'm feeling fine. I have to work again that night, so doing the closing shift again. So then I get ready for work, normal. I get to work, I explain what's going on to my manager, and just so she's aware of what's going on in case I need to leave or anything like that, which I ended up having to leave that day again. I started feeling a very faint pain in that same exact spot again. So I was like, okay, I'd rather just go home and lay down and relax just in case it gets any worse or if anything were to happen. My husband was going to the airport that night to pick up his cousin that was coming to visit from Switzerland. So I called my brother to come stay at my house with me just in case anything were to happen. I'd rather have someone there with me. So then I get home, shower, get comfy, put on some PJs, and the pain starts to get worse. So then I was like, okay, the doctor had told me to take Tylenol if the pain comes back. So that's what I did, took some Tylenol, because it's all you can take when you're pregnant. But that didn't help. It just kept getting worse. So my brother got to my house, I think it was already like 9:30 at night, And I was like, I'm gonna try to go get some sleep, but the pain just kept getting worse. It just kept progressing, it was so bad. Every position I would lay in, it would just be so painful. I kept trying to call my husband, see, how close he's getting to the house. The airport's about like 45 minutes to an hour away from my house. So I kept asking him how much longer, because I didn't want to go to the hospital without him. So thankfully he got home, and I was just in tears, like literally like panicking. I was in so much pain. And when I am in like an intense amount of pain, I get so nauseous. So on top of that pain, I felt like I was gonna throw up. It was horrible. We finally get to the hospital, and it's already really late, like maybe like 11 o'clock. My husband had to carry me out of the house, into the car, out of the car, onto a wheelchair to wheel me into the hospital. And so we got to the ER, had to like check in and do all that stuff. I was in so much pain. I was like hyperventilating, and then I started getting lightheaded because I was breathing so heavy, which is not good. I was panicking. And they asked me on a scale of 1 to 10 how bad my pain was, and I was like, it's a solid 9. Like, it's horrible. I really can't function right now. It hurts so bad. So they bring me right in. I get in. Of course, I explained to them that I had just found out that I was pregnant literally 2 days before. And I had gone to my doctor to get a blood test to check on the HCG levels to see if they were doubling, but I hadn't gotten the results back. She hadn't called me. So they paged an OBGYN to come down to talk to me, kind of run some tests, see what's going on. So then she sets up the internal ultrasound for me. I felt like I was in that room for like 40 minutes. It felt like forever, and it was very uncomfortable. So they bring me back to the room, and after maybe about half an hour, the doctor comes in again to tell me the results of the ultrasound. And she confirmed that the pregnancy was in my left fallopian tube. So it was in fact an ectopic pregnancy. An ectopic pregnancy means a pregnancy outside of the uterus. So a lot of times it's in the fallopian tubes. In rare cases it happens in the ovaries, but mine was in my left fallopian tube. I was in shock. I didn't really say anything. I was just like, okay. And then the second the doctors left, I just broke down, I just broke down and started crying. My husband, tried to comfort me, told me that everything was gonna be okay, that not to worry, just kind of keeping me together. After the doctors came back in and told me that the pregnancy was in fact ectopic, they told me that they didn't have an OBGYN unit in this hospital, so they had to transfer me to another one that was luckily down the street. So they got an ambulance and transferred me down. So I get to the hospital and I'm in a lot of pain still at this point. The pain hadn't gone away. So then I'm waiting to see another doctor from that hospital, and she finally comes in, introduces herself, asks me if I'm feeling pain, asks me what's going on, what I've been feeling, and then she reviews the records from the previous hospital that I was transferred from, and she confirmed that the ectopic pregnancy is in my left fallopian tube. And then she gave me pretty much 2 options: either get surgery to remove the pregnancy as well as my fallopian tube, or get a shot of methotrexate, is what I believe it's called. It's what they give to cancer patients, I believe. It would target the pregnancy and dissolve it. But she was really urging me to do the surgery just because of how there appeared to be fluid around the tube. So they were assuming that it might have been blood. but they wouldn't know for sure unless they went in for surgery. I needed some time to think about the options she had given me. So she left the room for a little while, and my husband and I started to discuss what was happening. I was crying, I was overwhelmed, I was exhausted, I was in pain. He and I took a moment to just pray together and kind of put it, in God's hands. So the doctor came back and again told me about the risks and what could happen. Pretty much said that if the pregnancy continued to grow, that my tube would burst and I would have internal bleeding, possibility of dying, which was terrifying. But at the same time, I had more faith than fear. I 100% knew it in my heart that that was not going to happen to me. I had faith that God was not going to allow that to happen to me, that my tube was not going to burst, and I wouldn't have to get surgery or make a decision to remove that child from my body. It's not something that I felt comfortable doing. So I told the doctors that I did not want to do any of those options. Of course, a bunch of other doctors came in to try to tell me that it's not a good idea, and I understand it's their job. It was a very difficult decision, but at the same time I was confident and I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to do surgery and I wasn't going to get that other medication to dissolve the pregnancy. So they decided to admit me to the hospital overnight to kind of monitor me, see how I'm doing. I had already stayed overnight in the ER, and at that point I think it was like 9 or 10 a.m. when they admitted me to the hospital. I had already spent all night in the ER, and I was going to spend all day in another room. Throughout that entire day, evening, a bunch of doctors kept coming in, seeing if that's still my decision to not do anything. And I was like, yes, that's still my decision. I don't want to have surgery, or I don't want to remove this child from my body. So then they keep me again overnight for another night to monitor me, see how I was doing. I wasn't feeling any more pain at this point. Yeah, so I left the hospital on Sunday. So that Sunday morning, I wasn't bleeding as much as I was before. It was very light. It's like spotting. That was it. They were like, okay, if there's nothing that you want us to do for you, then I guess you just go home and come back every week and we'll check your pregnancy hormone levels to see if they're dropping normally. And that I was fine with. I just wanted to go home and relax and not be in a hospital for another night. It was already bad enough being there for 2 nights in a row. So then that was the game plan for the next however many weeks were necessary. I went back to that hospital every week to check my HCG levels, and they were dropping each time significantly. So I knew that the pregnancy was leaving naturally. I was miscarrying naturally, which at first really upset me, just in the sense of like, I had been praying the entire time, asking God to make a miracle and put that baby in the right place, because I know that God can do that if that was the plan. But later on, I kind of realized that that wasn't what was going to happen. That wasn't what God had planned for at this time. So I had to shift kind of my focus and just asking God that that baby would just leave naturally if it wasn't the right time. For the next month and a half, almost 2 months, I went back to the hospital every week, and the pregnancy hormone levels, the HCG levels kept dropping normally. I wasn't feeling any more pain, which was great. So I thank God for that, for removing that pain. I guess looking back at that experience, because it still is pretty recent, I don't know, at first I had so many questions as to why me, why is this happening? I've wanted this for so long, and we've been trying for so long, and now that it actually happened, why do I have to go through losing this child? What? God, what is this? I don't understand. One thing that really helped me throughout that experience, honestly, everyone around me, I had a really, really great group of people around me. My husband is seriously the best. He was so incredibly helpful throughout that whole experience, that whole journey. He stayed really strong and encouraged me to stay really strong. It was really difficult. A lot of times we go through certain situations that we might question, why. But I truly believe that God has a plan and a purpose for everything. Every single thing happens for a reason. I don't know the reason for that at this moment, but that's okay. I have complete trust and faith in Jesus, and I know that I will get pregnant when the time is right, and it's going to be such a blessing. I haven't given up or stopped trying, and that's something that I just want to encourage anyone going through something like this, or just a difficult situation in general. If you're going through something difficult in your life, just don't give up. Stay positive. That helped me a lot. Keeping my faith strong and just putting my focus on God and what He has for my life. I want to thank everyone that helped me through prayer, through just being there for me when I needed a shoulder to cry on. It was very difficult, but I know that God has something beautiful planned for my future and for my family's future. And I know that I will get pregnant again in the future. I'm not worried about that at all. I'm just, I guess, grateful for this experience, because I honestly learned a lot about myself. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've been through a situation like this or going through a situation like this, just know that you are so strong, and whatever happens or whatever happened, it happened for a reason. I pray that you don't have any anger or resentment, or you feel like it's not worth trying. I pray that you aren't afraid of what God has to offer you in the future. And that's it. Thank you for sitting through this long video and hearing my story.